Someone once said, Satan is alive and well on planet Earth. But there's a follow-up. Why is Satan alive and well on planet Earth when he's already been defeated by God? And with us today is L.A. Marzulli, who has pursued this subject for years. He's written books. He has produced DVDs, and you're still doing that even right up to the present moment. And we're going to talk about a recurring title, your work on the trail of the Nephilim. And the Nephilim are the fallen ones. They are found in Genesis as disobedient angels who came down to try to corrupt man. And how did that happen? Why were they allowed to do it? And then they were defeated. And others came, and then those were defeated, and others came. And we are still wrestling, not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers. In other words, the whole dark side is poised against man. And the question is, why does God allow that? And what is he doing? Well, I think you have gone a long way to clarifying what exactly is happening, because you've been on the trail of the Nephilim.
Mm-hmm. Well, our mission statement is to expose the deception of the prince of the power of the air, i.e. Satan, and to herald the return of the King, Jesus. We think that, I believe, and I know you do too, that we're in the window of time with all the prophetic literature, Israel back in the homeland, and the punch list is right there. Wars and rumors of wars, earthquakes, famines, pestilence, everything is firing on all 8 cylinders. So we're in that window of time where many of us long to see the return of the King. And that's why we're exposing what the enemy has done in the past, but also we're heralding the return of the King.
We are heralding the return of the King in strange circumstances. There's a lot of evil around. And you and I were talking before we came on today about Moses appearing before Pharaoh, and about the contest with the serpents. And let's review that just a little bit and use that as a stepping stone to start what we're going to talk about today.
I think it's great because, we all read it. We've all seen Cecil B. DeMille's film, Moses and the Ten Commandments and the whole deal. And most of us, when we watch that, I don't think a lot of people realize what's going on here. There's a chapter in the book on Countermove that talks about a full-blown occult paradigm, which is an operation, which is working. When Moses and Aaron show up in Pharaoh's court, they throw their staff down, and it becomes a serpent. Well, the magicians do the same thing. No one bats an eyelash. Now, again, Moses' staff, Moses that turns into a serpent, swallows the other ones up. But no one's running out of the room going, oh my gosh, did you see that? This is normal. This is absolutely normal. And what I mean by that is the church looks at this and we fail to understand, in my opinion, really what's going on here. There's a full-blown occult paradigm in operation, which is the law of the land. And guess who's behind that? The fallen one.
And the fallen ones are seen all the way through the Bible. They are fallen, but they still have some strength. Mm-hmm. And they are very, very crafty. Satan himself, who was the anointed covering cherub before he rebelled, super intelligent being, and those who followed him, the angels that fell, were super intelligent beings, and we read about those in Jewish history, the book of Enoch. We read about them in the Bible. We read about them everywhere. They're going about their business. We read about them in the New Testament, where they are principalities and powers, rulers of the darkness of this world. And you and I both believe that occasionally they are visible as materializing visions in the sky. Mm-hmm. I think they travel in what we call UFOs. They are busily going about their business globally, day and night, 24/7. and have been since the days of Moses. And the beautiful thing about this is that you and I are safe in Christ. But the battle is still going on, and I believe that that idea is dropped, is very often dropped. We don't really live as though we're in a pitched battle.
I think much of a church has a truncated view of the supernatural. It's almost an anti-supernatural view.
Yeah.
And yet the Bible, if we were to take the supernatural out of the Bible, what's left? You've got some genealogies, you've got some battle reports, and that's basically it. So we read about the virgin birth and floating axes, talking donkeys, water that's changed into wine, men that walk on water, the dead are raised. I mean, these are all supernatural acts by a loving, benevolent God who creates this book for us, which I call the guidebook to the supernatural, because that's what it is. It's the Bible, but it's a guidebook to the supernatural. And when we read it, its pages and the prophetic literature that's there, which talks with great specificity things that will happen. Like just think of the gathering of Israel back into its ancient homeland. You know, who would have thought? Nobody ever would have imagined that. And yet, here they are. Prophecy fulfilled.
And I have my Bible open to Isaiah here, Isaiah 26. And there's something here, L.A., in the 14th verse of that chapter. It says, "They are dead, they shall not live. They are deceased, they shall not rise. Therefore hast thou visited and destroyed them and made all their memory to perish." Well, who would be this mysterious they? And it's revealed if you read this in the Hebrew. They are dead is the word Rephaim. Right. That's a word for giants. And there were giants in the earth in those days. And they come, they propagate, they have wars with God's chosen people, and then they disappear. And there are several waves of this kind of happening. And what's fascinating to me is that when you turn to the end of this chapter in Isaiah, you come to verse 19, "Thy dead men shall live together with my dead body shall they arise, awake and sing, you that dwell in the dust." And so this entire story in chapter 26 is woven together, and it's usually referred to as the kingdom song of Israel. In other words, Israel is going to defeat these Nephilim, or Rephaim as they're called here. Rephaim are just the second generation of the giants who came in the Old Testament days. But what's beautiful about this is that to those who have eyes to see and ears to hear, the battle is revealed. What's going on just behind the scenes. And I would say in Israel today, the same battle is going on. The spirits of Satan's henchmen still alive and well, still battling all over anywhere that God's will is designated to be done, they're going to be collecting at that point and resisting it. So you, in your travels and researches, developing these On the Trail of the Nephilim DVDs, are bringing that backstory out where people can actually see it. Now, you have been met with a little resistance from time to time, right?
Oh, absolutely. Not only from Christian circles, but academia. The academics don't like the result, let's say, on number 6 in the series, DNA, the final result. Let me just, people, we were castigated by the archaeologists in Peru, basically threw us under the bus. They didn't like what we had discovered there. And what we discovered was that these elongated skulls that are found pretty much everywhere on the planet, but specifically the ones we tested were in Peru, the DNA came back and showed the haplogroup, which comes from the maternal side of the family, the mother's side of the family, that they came from the Middle East and Europe. Oh, it's got to be contamination. Not so fast, citizen. No, it doesn't. And we had 58 samples. Mondo Gonzalez was down there with us. He was our lead archaeologist. Mondo and I took the samples with the strictest protocols, lab suits. We changed the lab suits after every specimen. And out of the 58 samples, about 28 of them sequenced. It's not contamination, because if it was contamination, then my DNA would show up as nuclear DNA. We never got nuclear DNA. We say that in the film. So, it's so easy to go, oh, it's contamination, but it's not. And so you say, well, who cares about this? My gosh, they were here in the Americas. We believe that they fled when Joshua and Caleb pushed the conquest of the Promised Land. They fled and came over here. And now we've got scientific proof, DNA, that shows a Middle Eastern haplogroup or an Eastern European haplogroup, which rewrites history, and people don't like to hear that either, but it does rewrite history.
And it's a corrupted genome we're talking about here.
Sure.
A humanoid, if you will.
And it points to the validity of the biblical narrative. That's why we do it. It points back at this just isn't mythos. This is real. When Joshua and Caleb came in and those Nephilim tribes were scattered all through the Promised Land, they went up. And after Jericho, that was it. After Jericho, I believe that's when the diaspora of Nephilim tribes began. And then we find vestiges all throughout the Mediterranean, into Europe, and into the Americas.
But Isaiah talks about this, and he says that these Nephilim, or Rephaim, the ones who are, and by the way, that's interesting. The fallen ones are called the Nephilim. They're the original encroachers of planet Earth. The secondary group are called Rephaim, which comes from a Hebrew word, rapha, which means illness or a weakening, which means that they were not as strong as the first group. And they came in, attempted to take over the Holy Land. And Isaiah, I just love this, they are dead. They shall not live. And the word dead is Rephaim. They are the dead ones who are trying to come back to life. And now, I would like for you to tell everybody why this story is important to the modern Christian. Why is it important that we know this?
We are inundated with, let's say, Darwinism. The planet believes in Darwinism. Most people believe in Darwinism. They believe that we're evolved from primitive life forms, and poof, here we are. There is no God. There is no prophecy. Jesus was a nice guy, but just a bunch of mythos. Well, there's a phrase I coined a while back, that there is a hidden history that has been deliberately obfuscated from the peoples of the world. And this whole series, pulls the covers back and shows people that, wait a minute, everything that we're reading about in our Bibles, there is a supernatural world. When the Bible talks about the Nephilim, the Rephaim, the Zanzumim, the Emims, all these different tribes, they did exist, they were here, and the vestiges of them are everywhere. They are here in the Americas. When we went to America Stonehenge, and we've talked about this before, it was absolutely unbelievable. The second film is a two-part, and let me just briefly, the first film, we discovered a stone. Now, it was laying in the museum. They had translated it. But they don't have that biblical narrative. When I say they, it's the Stone family. They don't have that biblical narrative like you and I do. So this stone was translated by the late Dr. Barry Fell. It lay in the museum, all right? And it was written in Iberian Punic. I can't read Iberian Punic, but Dr. Barry Fell could. And when he saw it, he said, I think that looks like Iberian Punic. I think I can translate that. And so we did. And so Kelsey Stone is one of the curators there, and Kelsey's leading me around the museum, showing me different artifacts, and he picks up the stone, and I go, well, what does that one say? And he says, to Baal of the Canaanites in dedication. And I left this in the film. You hear this long pause, and I go, what did you just say? And he kind of giggles, he goes, oh yeah, this is a dedication stone to Baal of the Canaanites. Now, that stone was uncovered in one of the collapsed chambers at America Stonehenge in Salem, New Hampshire. Okay, it lay in the museum for 11 years. It's not a hoax. If it's a hoax, it's a really bad one. I'm going to just chisel this in and let it lay in the museum for 11 years. Nonsense.
It's okay, so what does that inscription tell you?
It points to the fact that the Nephilim were here in the Americas, and that site, which is 4,000 years old, by the way, was dedicated to Baal of the Canaanites. What is that doing in the Americas?
So they had to run for it at a certain point in time, and they came to the Western Hemisphere. And we're talking about the defeat of the Rephaim, exactly as Isaiah talks about. And of course, many other books of the Bible talk about the defeat of the Rephaim. There are vestiges of them still left today, I'm convinced.
Absolutely.
And their skeletons are everywhere. And by the way, there is a continuing effort to hide them so that the world will not see
most
them.
Definitely. And why is that?
Why would you want to hide that story?
Because it points back to the validity of a supernatural world, and specifically, very specifically, that our Bibles are true. This is not mythos. This is not a fairy tale. They were here. Why does Jesus point to the days of Noah? It'll be like the days of Noah when I return. Those are his words. We skip over those phrases. That's a dire warning. He's letting us know that, guess what? It's going to be very similar to the days of Noah. And in my opinion, what differentiates the days of Noah from any other time? It's the presence of the fallen angels openly revealed and doing their nasty things, which they did, which resulted in the flood. And I think we're going to see it. It'll be slightly different, but I think it's here and it's manifesting.
I want to read through a few titles here of 6 DVDs.
Sure.
All of these have the caption "On the Trail of the Nephilim," but we have the mysterious mound builders, mathematical mysteries of the mound builders, secrets of the supernatural, America's Stonehenge, which you just referred to. And by the way, watching that, I've got to tell you, the hair on the back of my neck stood up when that was revealed. That
It's unbelievable.
in America.
In America.
And we have here Axis Mundi,
Center of the world.
The center of the world. And what do you mean by the center of the world? Well, that would take a while, and you might want to do that, but we discovered that someone went to the trouble to trace out points on the globe, and at specific points they built memorials, if you will, or worship centers.
Which line up to the standing stones at America's Stonehenge. So you've got the center of the henge and all these standing stones around it. And when you go from the center out to the summer solstice standing stone and you draw a line on Google Earth, you wind up intersecting, we show this in the film, you wind up intersecting the central trilithons at Stonehenge, England. That's not a coincidence, but that's only one connection. We discovered other points on the globe where these megalithic sites are, like Machu Picchu, like Teotihuacan in Mexico, like the pyramids in the Canary Islands, and on it goes. That's why we call it the Axis Mundi, the center of the world. It was absolutely mind-boggling.
Absolutely mind-boggling, and I can tell you, as someone who has read the Old Testament, assiduously looking up geographical references of all sorts, and oftentimes being disappointed. Then when I watched, particularly the Canaanite stone that you just referred to, everything pops together, and suddenly when you go back to the Old Testament and start to read, it's a different Old Testament. You realize now, for example, when the Israelites met the giants, and we have the famous discussion about, shall we go in and defeat the giants? And they all decided, well,
we're like grasshoppers in their sight.
We're like grasshoppers. And you tend to read across that story as a side story, but that when you begin to link it with what you're doing, suddenly it has a new meaning.
It has new meaning, and the fact, this is what blows my mind, Gary. We've been all over Europe, Israel, South America, and all over the Americas, and it's global. And this is why there's a hidden history, and we reveal it in the series. There is a hidden history which has been deliberately concealed, covered over. I mean, nothing you see here, keep moving type of thing from the peoples of the world. And it points back to the validity of the supernatural world that we read about in our Bibles.
Because the one who has led them down through the millennia is still leading them today.
Absolutely.
Satan still has a degree of power, and he has his principalities, powers, rulers of darkness in high places, heavenly places, that still function. And it's not a function strictly against the church of the living God. It is a function that has historical roots. He's trying to regain what he lost. Mm-hmm. And what did he lose? Well, that's the story that's hidden in the trail of the Nephilim. He lost a lot. Going all the way back to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, they were battling these
entities. Yeah.
The battle still goes on in our culture today, except it's behind the scenes. And you've gotten in a little trouble. Let me take a minute and let's talk about those strange things that one sees flying in the air. It is my belief that angels and demons are in a constant state of battle in our world today, and very often they pop into view.
They do, and what was once tabloid is now mainstream. In other words, when you and I first met, which is, 12 years ago, and we were talking about these lights in the sky, we were very careful how we couched it. Well, it's on Tucker Carlson. That's mainstream. It's Fox News, CNN. It's basically, it's everywhere. And now it's okay to talk about these strange lights in the sky. We've had people come up and tell us, like the government of the United States, I'm not making this up, basically state that we have vehicles not made on this earth in our possession. We've tested the metal from the hubcaps from these vehicles, as you like to say, and they have isotopes in them not found on this earth, that they move with impunity over the skies, and they travel extremely fast. And Commander David Fravor, Tucker Carlson, 2017, looked right at the camera and said, whatever this was not made on this earth. So that's what we're discussing. We believe this is not ET, interplanetary, interdimensional. This is interdimensional. This is the handiwork of the fallen ones.
And long story short, they will be revealed during the coming tribulation period. In other words, when the church is taken out of the world, which we believe is an imminent event, and global wars begin to expand as described in both the Old and New Testaments, the devil and his angels will be released one final time. And by the way, this is not some spooky new thing we're just exposing you. This is biblical.
Right.
People have been preachers have been preaching for thousands of years about this coming great battle. And you, in your pursuits, have come to the point where suddenly we have a clear connection. And that's wonderful.
Thank you, Gary. I would hope that when people sit down and watch this, and we start peeling back what's really here on these sites, these megalithic sites all over the planet, that they walk away with two things. They realize that we're living in a supernatural world. They realize just how important salvation through Jesus really is.
Amen.
Because it rescues them from that.
Let's just take a moment and tell you how you can obtain these studies on DVD. And by the way, LA has so many studies, it's amazing.
It's always exciting when L.A. Marzulli joins us. His worldwide travels in search of the biblical Nephilim is a fascinating journey into the ancient past. L.A. believes the Nephilim fled the Promised Land, heading west to remote islands like Cyprus and Sardinia, and other places like France, the UK, Malta, Peru, and the US. They left behind physical proof all over the world, gigantic megalithic architecture with no human explanation, elongated skulls, enormous six-fingered skeletons. Even our greatest engineers can't explain how these massive monuments and abandoned cities were constructed. You're going to enjoy the journey with L.A. as he takes you on a tour of these ancient monuments. Along the way, he visits private museums, captures aerial drone footage of ancient tombs, visits mysterious underground cities in Malta and Gozo, and takes you places you could never hope to visit in your lifetime. I guarantee you that you have never seen anything quite like this. Today, we're offering you the first 6 DVDs in the series as part of the Lost Civilizations package, with the brand new Lost Civilizations DVD included as a free bonus. You'll receive all 7 DVDs for your gift of $125 or more, and as always, free shipping is included anywhere in the USA. We'll also include a free mystery DVD as our way of saying thank you for supporting the important work of Prophecy Watchers. Just call the toll-free number on the screen 24/7 and we'll get all 7 volumes in this biblical adventure series on their way to you. Or visit us online at prophecywatchers.tv. Each month, the Prophecy Watcher magazine arrives in thousands of mailboxes all around the world. Our newly expanded 48-page magazine features cutting-edge articles written by the top prophecy experts, writing about things you may never hear about in church. Examine the giants of Genesis 6, the future wars prophesied for Israel, the rapture of the church, prophecies about the Antichrist and the tribulation, the rebuilt Jewish temple, the book of Revelation, transhumanism, artificial intelligence, and so much more. You can subscribe to the digital version of the Prophecy Watcher for $20 a year, subscribe to the print version for $30 a year, or for a very limited time, we're offering a lifetime subscription to either the digital for $100 or the print magazine for $150. It's the gift that just keeps on giving. Call the toll-free number on the screen or visit our online bookstore at prophecywatchers.tv to take advantage of this limited time offer. Thanks for watching today. Be sure to join us next week for another exciting program. Until then, we'll see you here, there, or in the air.
Well, I hope you will avail yourself of all of this information, obtained, by the way, with a lot of blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah,
you have really gone the second and the third and the fourth mile.
Thank you.
Into places where I don't think I would go.
Crawling into caves, yep, and other things.
That's right. Well, how can we round this up? What are we talking about, L.A.? What do we want our brothers and sisters in Christ to know about the battle for the church?
Well, we know that at some point, and I believe the church is out of here, that Satan and his angels fight with Michael and his angels. They're kicked out. I call that the great eviction. They come to earth, and Satan is really ticked off because he knows his time is short. We are rapidly, in my opinion, moving towards that time. We're not there yet, but we're moving towards it. And what this series does is it shows us, as I said earlier, the validity of a supernatural world and just how important the guidebook of the supernatural, i.e. our Bibles, really is, because it talks about all this stuff. All we're doing in the film is go, hey, look at this.
And that's really all you can do. But what the film does is open your mind to heretofore obscure verses. You've read this thing for years and you wonder, what does this mean? And suddenly you have the information. You have a moment of clarity. You're able to connect things that you couldn't connect before. And that is a wonderful, wonderful thing you're doing. Any final words?
You know, if you think you know Jesus but you don't know him, then you don't know him. And that's simply said, but it's true. He is the King. He is our creator. He created all life on this planet. He spoke it into existence. He's coming back soon. You want to get on board, and it's very simple. Believe on him who was sent, which is Jesus, and we confess our sins and ask him to come in, and he will come in and he will change your life just like he changed our lives.
Amen.
He continues to do so.
Thank you very much, L.A. Pleasure having you here. Hey, you keep watching. We are. Thanks for joining us on Prophecy Watchers. You can find us on the web at prophecywatchers.com